Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gaelic Lives podcast. You're very welcome to our review show, and we're looking back at all the action from the weekend, and there was plenty of action across the 9 counties of Ulster. With Alan Rogers here from the Ulster Herald, he's going to help us look back at the Tyrone game, and then we're going to look at all the other teams with Megan McMullen and now Yarlin. So, on the start, I suppose back-to-back defeats for Tyrone. And I was just watching on from an iPod in Ballybuffet, so I didn't get a good judge of the game, but it seemed like a fairly low-standard game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Sean. I suppose we have become accustomed over this past 4 weeks or so to these high-scoring encounters where there's multiple goals and over 20 points and teams staging great comebacks. Well, whatever happened yesterday in Castlebar, we had a throwback to the worst days, and I mean the worst days of the old rules where it was lateral football, where teams were afraid to take shots for points, and as a result of that you had a very low scoring match, 12-10 at the finish. There was only a point scored in the first quarter. It really was a game that should be best forgotten, and unfortunately from a Tyrone point of view it turned out to be a defeat for them, and a second defeat in 3, which I suppose really means now that the four games left to have are against Donegal, Kerry next weekend, Dublin, Donegal and Galway. Now, by any standards, those are 4 very tough matches, and especially when maybe Tyrone at the moment aren't firing on all cylinders, it really is going to be a battle against relegation. And I suppose the game yesterday shows the improvements that Tyrone need to be making.
Was the wind a big factor? Were conditions a big factor? Alan, again, we're watching on from an iPod in the press box in Ballybuffet, so it's hard to judge, but did the wind have a big impact on the game?
The wind did have an impact in the sense that it was blustery. Conditions were poor, but I'm sure in Ballybuffet conditions were poor. Conditions were poor in Tralee on Saturday night. So I don't think that you can really use the conditions as a reason for the poor quality football that was on offer. I think what happened, particularly from a Tyrone point of view, was the struggle to break down the Mayo defence. They didn't struggle to create clear-cut chances, but they struggled whenever they got those clear-cut chances. Their accuracy was poor, the drop balls short, passes went astray. And even though the wide count, like Tyrone's wide count, I think was 9 yesterday, but it was the manner of those wides. There were wides that should have been, were from relatively easy angles, and then the number of balls that were dropped short. It was just a very frustrating game. It was a very frustrating game to watch, and it was a very frustrating game from a Tyrone performance viewpoint as well.
And obviously still down a few key men, Alan. You haven't any of the Ergal Kieran boys back yet. I don't think any of them were in the panel yesterday even, so...
No, none of them were in the panel. Now, afterwards, Malachy O'Rourke did intimate that they would be back to full training now this week, and whether or not that means that they line out against Kerry next weekend, next Sunday in Healy Park, is a totally different story. But I think certainly at the moment, there needs to be energy pumped into that Tyrone team, because yesterday was a very lackluster, a very flat performance. And if Dara and Rory Canavan and Peter Hart and whoever else can bring that energy, then they'll be more than welcome. But I suppose the difficulty that Malachy O'Rourke faces is that maybe he wants to, ease them in gently and sort of maybe bring them on as a sub next week, or start them and bring them off or whatever. But the problem is it's now reached the stage where you really do need them, because Tyrone are very seriously in a relegation battle here.
And that relegation battle, and we'll get to it on, because Armagh and Derry are well in that too. But how important is staying in the top tier, do you think? Because I know the last 2 All-Ireland champions have come from Division 2, but once you're up there, you want to stay there, don't you?
Yeah, and I suppose we in Tyrone over this past probably a lot of years, there has been that expectation where they have been eating at the top table on a regular basis, and that has been highlighted by the fact, that you've won 4 All-Irelands, and even though there has been times when you have been threatened with relegation, and we'll have to remember Tyrone went down twice since 2010, went down to Division 2, and it didn't materially affect their championship expectations or their championship performances. But I suppose it's the thought of relegation that probably strikes fear into a lot of counties, in the sense that they want to be there playing the likes of Dublin and Kerry. And I know there's no team, probably with the exception of the Dubs, who are unbeaten, but there's no team that has their place in Division 1 guaranteed at the moment. But certainly from a Tyrone point of view, whatever about Armagh, whatever about Derry, from a Tyrone point of view, they don't want to be relegated, because this is a team in transition. This is a team that there's a lot of hope attached to, and to go down to Division 2, I think, would be a setback, and it's a setback that they'll want to avoid at all costs.
And if ever there was a game to get the blood going in Tyrone, it's Kerry coming to Omagh, Alan. So 2 points guaranteed next Sunday.
Well, that's a big question, I suppose. Over the years, like in Tyrone, I think Ulster teams generally have struck fear into Kerry teams, be it league or championship, over this past, probably since Armagh in 2002, beating them in the All-Ireland final, and Tyrone in 2003. So Kerry coming to Omagh aren't the big bogeyman that maybe they were 40 years ago. But at the same time, they have to be beaten. And the way Tyrone played yesterday won't beat Kerry. And we have to realise as well that Kerry are coming to Omagh knowing that they too need points. So yes, there's that sort of motivation that Tyrone will have to beat a Kerry team. We saw it against for Errigal Kieran against Dr. Crooks at the start of January. We've seen it, we saw it with Armagh last year in the All-Ireland semi-final. But that only brings you so far. You have to produce a performance, and Tyrone will realise that they really do have to produce a big performance if they're to get those 2 points. Maybe it's their best chance. I don't know. They could spring a surprise and beat Kerry, and they could spring a surprise and beat Dublin. Who knows?
I wouldn't be a betting man, but I always bet Tyrone to beat Kerry. It's always usually a safe bet, especially when Tyrone's up against it. That was brilliant.
Especially when they're at home as well.
Alan, that was brilliant. Thanks very much for coming on.
No bother. I'm going to hand over now to my glamorous assistant, Niall. He's going to take my place. Thanks, boys.
Great, Alan. Thank you.
Cheers, Alan.
Mal, as we get a quick substitution done there, Niall's going to come in place of Alan. You were in Ballybuffet yesterday. I was talking to you pre-match. There's only one place to start with this game, and it's Michael Murphy. What an unbelievable impact he made, just been on the field, whatever, 20 minutes.
I think it's one of those things, Sean, that you can only really appreciate when you're there. Like, the temperature completely went through the roof when he came on. Like, the game was it was just going along a certain pattern. And I remember thinking to myself, this game's actually quite similar to the old rules. It's all pretty calm. Armagh got a good wee start. Darragh McMullen's goal was a brilliant finish. And then Donegal came back. But see, whenever Murphy came on, like Andrew Murnan's, correct me if I'm wrong here, Sean, Andrew Murnan's two-pointer put 2 points between the teams, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
And I remember looking up at the scoreboard and wondering, was there going to be like a turn like there was with Derry and Galway and, Dublin and Kerry? And next minute I could see the number 22 jersey. I don't even remember him warming up. I just saw there's Murphy. And he actually was out over the line first before there was even any paper exchanged. It was nearly like, I thought, well, nobody's actually coming off. And then the fourth official sort of had to weigh him back in again, and then on he went, and it completely changed the whole atmosphere. Like, even Sean, whenever his name was read out for the late change in the panel, he got a big cheer. But whenever he went on again, and I think what helped as well is Patrick McBeard had scored a brilliant point just before he came on. So then that put the temperature up again, and then him and Forker went at each other, and then Forker got sent off, and then that added to it as well. But like, he kicked a point off his left foot with his first shot after 27 months being out of inter-county action. Went on to his right foot, kicked one. He kicked a free. He won a couple of vital possessions, and then that one he cocked above his head, I think it led to Owen Doherty's point. He pulled it in with one hand into the other, and he sort of used Kieran Moore as a shield to get out, and away he went. And Owen Doherty's point was a wee bit like going against Armagh Ulster Fane. It was one of those outside of the bit ones, but Michael Murphy's input. Now Donegal, I think Donegal still would have won if Armagh had 15 men. I still think they might have dug it out without Murphy, but it completely changed everything. And I think it was probably the best thing to do was to do it yesterday, because the longer it went on, I would say Jim was fed up answering questions about Michael Murphy coming back. Like, I interviewed Colin McFadden last week for Gaelic Life, and he just says, look, he'll be back at some point. So I say they're probably just, let's get this thing done and dusted, and it's not a talking point anymore.
Yeah, he was the same as yourself. No, I was thinking about it just last night. It was the perfect time to bring him on. You had a full house in Ballybuffet. You were beating All-Ireland champions. He comes on, and the impact he had, like, it was the perfect time to just throw him into it. And I suppose it leaves question marks now. If he got 20, 25 minutes yesterday, are we going to see more of him, or is that going to be his role? Is it going to be a 20-minute man, or how do you see Jim McGuinness using him, in the next couple of weeks and this year?
Well, the thing about it is, we were talking to Alan there about relegation, and a lot of teams are going to be looking over their shoulder, but Donegal don't need to do that anymore. But every Donegal person are nearly afraid of the league final because of Mayo and because of Derry, and to be fair, it's so close this year to the championship. But I think that Donegal find it difficult to stop winning. They could end up in the league final. But the likes of Murphy, he make it 4 games now, Sean, to get action. But I don't think it's any coincidence how well Donegal played yesterday, because like Conor O'Donnell, Ryan McHugh, Patrick McBrearty, they all, Kieran Thompson, they all kick points. Like, they're bound to be thinking, is my place under threat here? Like, if Murphy is deemed a starter, as I said to somebody, he's not there for the free gear and the free trips down through the country. He's there to win an All-Ireland. So if he's a guaranteed starter, everybody else's place is up for grabs. Everybody. So that can only help. But as much as a lot of it was to do with him yesterday, Sean, I actually thought that Conor O'Donnell, who missed last year's All-Ireland semi-final, I don't think he was even in the 26 that day against Galway. I think he's every bit as big an addition, and he hasn't even been mentioned along with Murphy and Owen McFadden-Ferry and Owen McHugh and the extras that have came back. So I think they're in a very good position to use Michael Murphy properly over the next 4 games to get him as much football as possible. Get Jack McKelvey a few games. Maybe give Owen Doherty a start, and try and just make the most of it, because they're safe. And if you're going to try and win an All-Ireland, as Armagh proved last year, you need to be fit to look over your shoulder with 55 minutes, knowing there's something behind you. And that's probably where Jim is now, where you're trying to get the perfect concoction of 20, 22 men that can win 3 big games in Croke Park whenever it really matters.
You mentioned just the scores they were putting up, man. Like, that's 3 games in a row now that they haven't got a goal. And
Yes.
I know with Ryan Ferry on last week, and he didn't seem too concerned about it because they're putting up 20 plus points every game. So I don't think Jim McGuinness would be too concerned that they haven't raised the green flag yet, because they're putting up such big scoring tallies. And I think they had 9 different scores yesterday. So the players from all over the field can come up and hit a point.
Aye, and they also didn't need 2-pointers. Like Galway are up to 13 2-pointers in 3 games, and they're undefeated. And that maybe is a story going into this weekend's game where they meet each other. Like, can Donegal win another game without a goal against a Galway team who could kick a few 2-pointers? So, but it probably comes down to, if you look, I know Kieran Moore played midfield yesterday, but he was laying out at number 12, absolute flying machine. Shane O'Donnell, flying machine. Conor O'Donnell, flying machine. Them boys are going to get inside the scoring area. So at some point, maybe, and far from me to tell Jim McGuinness how to manage a football team, but they are punching holes. But if Michael Murphy and Patrick McBrearty are up there, is there an option for them to do what Derry did? Like, Derry pumped 2 high balls in and got 2 points. against Galway. And I remember looking down at the pitch yesterday, Sean, and Murphy was in 1-on-1 with a man, Patrick Beardy and Oisin Gallen, and I remember thinking to myself, what inside three are going to be comfortable with a high ball going in there? What goalkeeper is going to be comfortable with that? So maybe Murphy's presence there might tempt a change of direction, but maybe it's a case of Jim won't want to bring out his new toys until the championship, so maybe that's what's up their sleeve. But it's certainly exciting times if you're from Donegal, and it's funny, you know, talking to them. They actually don't want to get to the league final, and they're actually scared to talk themselves up now. But they're very much in the conversation, and they were before yesterday, but they very much are now.
Yeah, I think the rest of the country's pretty much talking them up, so Donegal, they'll not have to talk themselves up too much. But we'll stay in Division 1, man. We mentioned when Owen was here that Armagh are in that relegation fight, along with Tyrone and Derry are there as well. But Derry now have a point on the board, so I suppose they're taking a bit of confidence from how they performed the other night. They were 8-9 points down maybe at a stage and come back to draw it.
Yeah, and you know, and as again Armagh you touch on as well, like they're in that mix as well, which is going to be, you know, we've three Ulster teams in the relegation mix in the top flight, which is going to be an interesting few weeks. But that point will be so valuable to Derry, but they actually could have won it. Like Ethan Doherty had a chance to win it at the end, and I think because Derry had missed so many chances, Sean, and they'd left a few short into the goalkeeper, Ethan got inside, there was a wee bit of space, and then it looked as if he wanted to make sure of the shot. And like John Daly came with a block. He had saved a shot from Neil McNichol as well. You know, and John Maher had made 3 blocks. Like the grip Galway brought was nearly unbelievable at times. But if Derry had lost that game after coming back from 9 points down, it would have been, I don't know where it went, to be honest, because the psychological imprint of it. And then when you think about it now, they could have been sitting on 4 points potentially, or they might have been sitting on none. But now they've won. There was a feeling down through the pitch when you're chatting to people that it actually was a decent performance. Like they played pretty well yesterday in the second half whenever they got going. Probably the first half, Dylan McHugh's goal changed everything 9 minutes in. Like he made the run through, he got sort of Derry switched off. And I'm wondering, when we talked about 2-pointers, Sean, like Paul Conroy is sort of the king of them. He got the ball around the D. And you just wonder, were Derry thinking, if Conroy's on the D, get eyes on him. And here Dylan McHugh comes from nowhere and gets the goal. And then Shane Walsh had kicked 6 points in the first half, 2 of them 2-pointers. And then they probably got a better balance to their defence after that. They moved Owen McAvoy across onto him, and he got hands on him. So, but 9 points was a massive, you know, it was a massive margin to pull back when you think how brittle Derry might have been after the finish against Kerry. But they won the throw-in at the start of the second half. Anton Tuchel won it. He kicked it into Conor Glass, who had played it full forward for that first 5 minutes. Shane McGuigan had the ball over the bar, and it was a start of sorts. Cian Darcy fisted a point at the other end to sort of cancel that out, and then it was all Derry for the rest of the game. Basically, you know, like Shane Walsh kicked a 2-pointer, which it's ironically you've Lachlan Murray up there. He was the star of the show, but it brings back to that debate about the foul where you actually fall over the ball. I think that has to go, because it's going to happen more and more. It just happened to be it was Lachlan Murray. It'll be somebody else next week where it's brought forward. But that was the only kick at the post Galway got. Like Lachlan Murray, I think people are wondering why he didn't start. I noticed he did say in his TG Cahar interview that there was only supposed to be 10 minutes in him, but he came on, he kicked 3 points. One of them was questionable. I remember at the time thinking that looks wide, but it was given. He set up a couple of scores. He just brought energy. He won a vital kick out as well. And probably then you have a couple of other additions that were quite good for Derry, like Marty Bradley made his starting debut in defence. He had just a wee bit more size than Mark Doherty. So, and then Ceathair McMonagle is an exciting customer up front for Derry. Like he's to give you an idea of his confidence, Steelstown got to All-Ireland final a couple of years ago, and he had scored a penalty against McGill in the semi-final. And the night before the final, they were sitting around playing the PlayStation in the hotel, and they thought, I wonder, will the goalkeeper have guessed what side I went to? Like Monaghan apparently said, well, lads, if we get a penalty tomorrow, some of you boys pretend you're taking it, and then I'll come up and kick it into the net. And that's what happened. So you just wonder, does somebody like that come into the Derry attack and, you know, give it a wee bit of something different, like an Owen McElhone does for Tyrone, because you need that wee bit. But a pleasing enough point for Derry, but they're very much, you know, the R word is, I was reading one of Niall's articles during the week where he mentions the R word, and it's very real that Derry are in the relegation mix. But how valuable will that point be? We'll have to see. But they go to Croke Park and again, Dublin were the comeback kings last weekend. So we'll have to see who can get the points this weekend.
Now down to Division 2 and Cavan picked up their first win of the year. They're still in a bit of a relegation fight there, but they'll be pleased with getting the first win.
Yeah, definitely. If ever one was badly needed, this was it. They had a very poor start to the league, not just in terms of results, but the performances haven't really been up to scratch either. You know, considering it's only 5 years ago they won the Ulster Championship title. Yeah, this was a game. It just ebbed and flowed. You know, it was nip and tuck right until the last few minutes. Then they got 2 goals to settle matters. Conor Madden came on as a sub and did very well. He scored 1-2, including one of which was a 2-pointer, but it's 1-2 nonetheless. So he got the goal that sort of set Cavan underway, and then he got another shortly thereafter when Grove McKiernan went for a point, but just stepped under the crossbars. The type of goal sometimes you see in ladies football. So it's not one a live goalkeeper I want to see again. But yeah, really good one for Cavan and plenty of positives for a change possibly. Dar McVeigh was brilliant, took 4 points. He's a former Cavan captain. He's a brilliant leader in the team. They're showing a wee bit of strength and depth. Killian Clark, another former captain, came on and helped shore up the back line. Conor Madden, as I mentioned there, he was another sub. So a bit of positivity from a Cavan perspective, which really was badly needed. And I noted a couple of columns penned by the Irish sports editor Paul Fitzpatrick in recent weeks, where it was like a State of the Nation address about where Cavan football is. You know, so they're definitely worried about things in that part of the world. So that one should brighten them up a wee bit.
And Monaghan, they had a top of the table clash at the weekend, and the Hyde Park seems to be a fairly tough place for Ulster sides to go. They were a bit like down in the first round. They were winning at half time, and I think Roscommon kicked 16 points in the second half or something. So it was a big turning point, and obviously breeze and conditions and everything played their part in it. But I suppose for Roscommon, their big scorer on the day was Dermot Murtagh. He kicked 12, including 2 frees, 2 2-pointers, and 2 2-pointed frees. So for us journalists, this is hard to tally all up and put up individual tallies for these scores. But I suppose from a Monaghan point of view, Conor McCarthy did miss a penalty, and he's been one person that we've talked about quite a lot on the podcast. He's been brilliant for them so far. He did get 2 points, but the penalty miss obviously would have left things a whole lot tighter if he'd have scored it. But Micheál Bannigan, brilliant performance, 1-4. And he's been somebody that, you know, the likes of him, David Garland, Stephen Mooney, Monaghan's looking to these boys to sort of step into that Conor McManus, gap that he has left, and Jack McCarran's only been used sparingly as well. So I think Bannigan, he really stepped up. 1-4 at the weekend was a brilliant return for him. But it's Monaghan's first defeat, but I'm sure they're still confident that they're in that promotion mix, and that they can still return to Division 1 and bounce straight back up after relegation last year. But Mal down, I suppose they're in that relegation mix too, and I know we're only 3 games in, but Down only have 2 points on the board after 3 games, and they lost to Meath in Newry at the weekend.
Yeah, I saw this as a bit of a shock, to be honest. It's probably a wee bit like Donegal and Ballybofey. Like, they built up a bit of a fortress in Park Esler, and I think there was a spell in the second half. I think Meath might have outscored them something like 8-1 or 9-1. Maybe that stat's not totally accurate, but there was that spell where they took control of the game. And like, from watching the first half of this game, Sean, like some of the scores, were excellent. Like watching it sometimes on TV is not totally accurate because you can't get the full picture, but like some of the kicking was brilliant. And like even like Ryan McAvoy's goal, like Ryan McAvoy would get on most teams in Ireland, to be honest. He seems to be able to play anywhere. And like that got them into a decent position. And there was obviously the question mark about the 2-pointer that wasn't given. Sorry, that was given and it was inside. I think it was Ronan Jones possibly in the first half. And it seems to be that it might have unsettled things. Like there seemed to be a couple of confused calls with officials in that game, and again, you need to be at it to fully appreciate maybe the level of frustration or how much impact it actually had on what way the game went. But it definitely opens up questions that need to be answered in terms of what way pitches are marked. Maybe it wasn't marked totally accurately. Maybe it needs to be clear. I don't know. But from Down's point of view, like they've went like they always say round 3 decides an awful lot. They've went from thinking about promotion to now looking over their shoulder. I have a feeling they won't go down. Like they seem to have adapted to the rules better than maybe a lot of people would have given them credit for. Like up until yesterday, they kicked 10 2-pointers. They were level with Galway going into last weekend, and they're able to use big Pat Havern as that option inside, and then McAvoy's goal as well. So they're well able to play it both ways. And when you talk about Donegal's pace, like Down have loads of that going through the middle. So I can't see them sucked into it, but I suppose you just never know. But that just leaves this game very frustrating for their management team because they're at home. You need to win your home games, and it just leaves them. It leaves it a frustrated enough week this week, in the camp, because like they came back. Was it 10 points down they were against Cork or 9 or something like that there? So you've got that wee bit of resolve, and coming back from that margin to win a game, it's bound to give you an unbelievable bounce. And then now on the other side of it, Conor Laverty, Kieran Mina, Mickey Donnelly, the lads are just going to have to try and get them picked up. But I think they can point to some of the great play they've had over the games and see, can they just take something out this week? Because if you went another week without a win, then you start to scratch your head that wee bit more. But I still think Down will be okay. It just means they're out of the promotion race, to be honest.
Yeah, I think they'll be okay too. They'll obviously have to pick up a few more wins, but I think they're good enough. They're a Division 2 team, so I fancy Down to stay up myself. On to Division 3 then.
They probably just struggle with men around the middle, just as a big picture. They probably just need a wee bit more size, but we're not going to help that today. That's a long-term thing.
On to Division 3 then, Niall. Fermanagh, a tough defeat to Clare at the weekend too.
Yeah, lost by 2 points. They'll be disappointed with the way it all panned out. The chance to level matters later on. Declan McCusker took a shot at a 2-pointer and hit the crossbar. So if that had gone over the bar, he probably would have got a draw out of it. Other than that, it was just a nip and tuck game between two evenly matched teams. Peter Keen's over Clare. I think at the end of the day, it was probably Emmett McMahon, won the game for Clare. He kicked 10 points across the 70-odd minutes. Fermanagh aren't going particularly well at the minute. They'll be disappointed by that one. It was a chance to win at their backs in the second half, and he scored 4 out of the first 5 points. And early on, they go into a lead for the first time, so it looked like they were motoring, but Clare dug deep and squeezed out the win. So probably a case of a missed opportunity for Kieran Donnelly's side there.
And Mala, a hefty defeat for Antrim too against Offaly. I think they conceded 4 goals and 2 red cards. It was just a bad day at the office.
Yeah, like Offaly, to be fair, were going pretty well themselves, so it was always going to be a tough game, and they lost Connor Stewart and Connor Hand to red cards. I can't really comment on them because I didn't see them, but it was an area Antrim were struggling in, because Connor Stewart would have been their nailed down midfielder, and they're trying to see who was best suited to lining up against him. And then they're playing, well, they're at home this weekend coming against Leitrim, but they're without their first choice midfield. I assume that both those men will be missing, so that just leaves it an even steeper climb. And I think in that second half spell, I think it was something like 2-8 to a point. It was just a collapse at that point. And if Offaly are in a decent position, and let's face it, Offaly's underage systems have been very good in recent times. The players that have been playing Sigerson Cup, and obviously like Mickey Hart has joined Declan Kelly in there in the management team, so he's obviously bringing a wee bit extra as well. And he just, with 13 men, it was just never going to work, and it just leaves Antrim in a really sticky position. But the thing about it is, it's a massive game from the point of view with Stephen Poachers in with Leitrim, and he lost so many players, and he's shipped a couple of heavy defeats himself. So it's a must-win game there for Leitrim, and it also is for Antrim. And it would probably give Antrim the nod at home, but it just means you've a lot of reshuffling to do. I know this is a review show, but it sort of ties into this game now, where do they have to put like Mark Jordan and Dermot McLeese in the midfield now? And a lot of rejigging around, because those are two very attack-minded players. Do they have to then become like anchors at midfield, and does it rob them of a different part of the game? So that is a concern for Antrim, because it was clear they had a really good performance early on to win that game, and now a wee bit like down of Louth this weekend, which is a big game in Drogheda. I think
they go to
close.
Yeah.
So and that's the same here with Antrim. So as I say, I know we'll be chatting about previews later, but it just leaves it a very big week in both those camps, about psychologically as well, just getting the whole thing lifted. And as Niall touched on with the Cavan victory, that's why it was so important for them. But Antrim now, you have a very difficult week ahead of them.
Yeah, headaches for Andy McEntee, certainly going forward. Just before we move on to our highlights, we'll run through a few results from the weekend. Camogie action was back, and Antrim picked up a win over Wexford. Derva Cosgrove was responsible for 7 points as they won 0-14 to 2-7. Down tasted defeat in round one. Limerick proved too strong, winning 113 to 1-5. That was the Camogie action. In hurling, then Cavan suffered a defeat to Mayo. Mark Moffat and Liam O'Brien got the goals for Cavan, but it wasn't enough for them to get something from the game. In ladies, then, there were 2 games in Division 4 involving Ulster teams, and Antrim kept their winning run intact. They defeated Longford 4-10 to 1-8. Teresa Mellon got 2 goals, while Laura Dahunce and Anna Mulholland also hit the net. Fermanagh are in second place in Division 4. They picked up a win over Wicklow, and Emer Smith grabbed 2-2 for them, while Aoife McCabe also hit the net. So our highlights of the week then, with a few player of the week candidates here. We spoke about Michael Murphy. Now you've gone for him for his impact in the Donegal win. But Mal, you went for Patrick McBurdy. I think he did get the official man of the match at the end of the game yesterday.
Yeah, he did. He was brilliant. And again, with Murphy coming back, having Patrick McBurdy on form, like I was listening to an interview with him driving home from the game to get an operation during the off season. So to come back and to get to that level again is a massive plus for Donegal. And it's like every team, Sean, whenever your captain's taking over nicely, and it just gives him a great platform up there. So a brilliant performance from Patrick.
And I went with Lachlan Murray for his performance. He got a big impact coming off the bench for Derry to draw level. And I know, Nell, you picked that for your result of the week, Derry coming back to earn a point against Galway.
Yeah, I watched the game in the tally, and I thought it was a very impressive comeback, given they really looked down and out at half time, whatever about the weather conditions, so they'll take a lot of confidence from that one.
And Antrim's Camogie victory, Mal, you went for it for your result of the week?
A massive result. Like, I know it's probably like they suffered an almighty hammer into Wexford last year, and I know there was a lot of players were missing and they changed manager and things like that, but that all parked a huge result for Antrim, and it gives them, and it's like every result, it gives them a chance to build into next week. But like the turnaround from last year is just seismic.
On shocks of the week, I went for that Derry comeback because I'd been watching it. I watched 45 minutes of it, and there was only one winner, and I left and checked my phone later on, and it was a draw. I couldn't believe it. So that was my shock of the week. Was Antrim and Offaly, Nell, with Mal sort of touched on it. I suppose the shock was just how the margin of victory here.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Sean. I couldn't have said any better myself. I thought it'd be a much more competitive contest, to be honest.
And Mal, you went for your shock of the week, the down game. You spoke about that. I suppose just the home advantage thing and the Erie Fortress thing. That's why the shock was down getting beat.
Aye, and then just coming back against Cork, and so it's definitely shocking. I fancied Tyrone to beat Mayo down in Castlebar as well, but if somebody had showed me the teams before it with Aidan O'Shea coming back and the Errigal boys been gone, it might have changed my mind a wee, but I still think that was a shock also.
And Ryan McAvoy's goal, Mal, I didn't get seeing it, but you went for it for your score of the week.
Yeah, and I think again it comes back to teams with variation, and I think it was Shea Miller put a perfect crossfield ball across, and I think it's just the fact that Ryan McAvoy, he can play midfield, he can play full back, but it was the way he turned his man inside and he just swiveled and back of the net, and just a brilliant example of a team that's looking for a bit of variation, that if you can get the right men in the right places, and McAvoy, Mr. Versatile, he found that brilliant finish.
And you went for a Kieran Kilkenny score now for your score of the week.
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. It was a great 2-pointer when Dublin were reeling in Kerry. He's a lad. He's such a brilliant player. He's nearly an all-time great in my opinion. But down the years, I suppose he's been more associated with kicking over points when he comes down the loop from 20 odd meters and whatnot. But he really boomed this one over the bar from about 45 meters out, and it was interesting to hear. I think it was Eamon Fitzmaurice. Saying that he was in punditry duty, saying that he was practicing those 2-pointers before the game, and I suppose his practice paid off.
I went with a Michael Murphy score. I could have picked a couple. Obviously scored not 3, but I went with that first one just because of the introduction he made. The red card obviously had a big impact, but it was a poor kick out from Ethan Rafferty straight to Murphy. But still, he had a bit to do and got it on his left foot. And as I think as Mal described earlier, it nearly brought the house down. Murphy's first score in 3 years or 2.5 years, so that was my score of the week. And also picked Conor O'Donnell from Young Sung Hero of the week because Mal, you spoke about him earlier too. Just thought he had a really, really good game against Armagh yesterday, and he's one of the players probably in that forward line that you're not really concerned about, or you're not really looking to. You're looking to McBurty, Gallen, Brennan, even Shane O'Donnell. So I was impressed with Conor O'Donnell. And I know, Mal, you've went with Louis Kelly from Monaghan for your unsung hero.
Yeah, I saw him playing Sigerson over this past couple of weeks, and he was brilliant. He made some great interceptions in that game against DCU, and then he came in yesterday, and I think he might have got a point actually against the Rossies as well. And from the point of view of one-to-one defending that we've talked about on here, he might be an option that'll it might allow Killian Lavelle to play further out the pitch. So a few options there for Gabriel Bannigan, but it's a brilliant addition. And you talked about Conor O'Donnell there. Like, if anybody wants to go back and watch Patrick McBurdy's point for 5 points to 1-2, I'm sure Pádraig Joyce will be pouring over it this week. Conor O'Donnell's run through the middle was just jaw dropping. It was unbelievable. And you chatted about Michael Murphy's point. Whenever somebody brought that up at the press conference, Ryan McHugh chipped up and says, "Ian with the left foot," as if it wasn't the Murphy norm. So brilliant score.
And Darren McVeety was your unsung hero this week.
Yeah, I suppose he won't get the headlines given he's not playing in Division 1, but he showed a hell of a lot of leadership, an important one for Cavan, and kicked 4 points as well. So fair play to Dara.
So that's all from us for today, folks. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll have another podcast then, and of course back next Monday with our review show as usual. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on wherever you hear the podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well if that's where you listen to the podcast. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks to Mal and Nell for coming on, and Alan earlier on for discussing all the games.
Thanks, Sean.